What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Big Johnny G for Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming.
Shut up and sit down.
What's up, Pixie Posse and wee little pixels all? I'm your buddy Big Johnny G, and thank you for checking out Two Gun Pixie, your gateway to legendary gaming. And today's episode is going to fit nicely into the Midday Monologue Monday playlist we have, where I talk about things that have to do with Dungeons and Dragons, board games, or some sort of tabletop adventure. If you like that subject, please check out the playlist. There are thousands of videos on that subject, I believe. But it's also going to fit nicely and perfectly into our Dungeons and Dragons playlist. So if you love Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game, or board games, dice game, card games, you want to see unboxings, you want to hear previews, you want to listen to reviews, you want to see playthroughs of Dungeons and Dragons, that's the playlist you want to go check out. And this is going to fit nicely in there. So listen, we drop a video every day of the week, and if you want to be a true member of the Pixie Posse, then please just subscribe and to make that happen. Thank you very much, everyone. Now let's get right into this video. So you want to learn how to play the basic Dungeons and Dragons, the classic Tom Moldvay edition. Well, I'm here to help you with that, my friend. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a few things. Okay? Obviously, you're going to need a copy of that rule book, whether it's a physical copy, whether it's a copy, a Xerox copy, or it's a PDF. You're going to need a copy of that. You're also going to need dice. You're going to need a 4. You're going to need at least 1, although you could use 3 6-sided dice. You're going to need an 8. You're going to need 1, possibly 2 if you can, of the 10-sided dice, a 12-sided die, and a 20-sided. So keep that in mind. Whenever you see the letter D, especially a smaller case letter D followed by a number, that's telling you which die it's talking about. So if you see D4, it's talking about the 4-sided die. It's close about D12, it's talking about the 12-sided die. All right, you're going to need pencil. You're going to need blank paper or character sheets, index cards, something to write your character on. Pencil, eraser, and also you're going to need some graph paper. Yeah, some old school graph paper in order to get started. Now, we have a video already on how to create a basic Dungeons and Dragons character under the title, Tom Vulo is a Chaotic Dwarf. So here's what it looks like, the thumbnail, and there's a link in the description if you want to learn how to make a basic Tom Moldvay edition Dungeons and Dragons character. Please go check that out. Now, there's also going to be a role. 2 different roles that you're going to have to fill for this game. One of them is going to be the Dungeon Master. Traditionally, there's 1 Dungeon Master per game, per table, per session. You're also going to need players. Preferably 2, at least, players. I usually think 3 is the low, sweet point of that. But basic can call for a large table. You can easily get up to 6 or 8 players around that table. If you're new to DMing, you probably want to keep it between 3 and 4, just to get your footing on the game. Now, a Dungeon Master's job is part narrator, part referee. It's their job to know the story, know the adventure, know the possibilities, know the non-player characters involved in it. An NPC is a character run by the Dungeon Master, not a player. They're background characters. They're the shop owners. They're the merchants. They're the people on the street and the night watch that you encounter during your game. They're also the monsters as well. That's the DM's job, is to narrate, pull the rules together, and pull together all those characters to tell the story of what's happening. Now, the other role in this game is that of players. And a player's job is to describe to the Dungeon Master what they are doing, especially in lieu of what the Dungeon Master tells them is going on. Verbally, this is a quid pro quo kind of game. And if you know that balance, then it's going to be really simple to stick with. Now, once you're playing the game, once you're actively into the game, you've already created your characters, you know who's the DM, you know who the players are. Let's talk about time in this game, since this game does cover time in different aspects depending on what you're doing. First of all, if you're doing basic dungeon exploring, going from corridor to corridor, checking out room to room, things like that, that's going to have a different time standard than combat. In dungeon, time is done in turns, and each turn lasts about 10 minutes. During those 10 minutes, you're exploring the dungeon, you are searching for traps, looking for treasure, secret hidden doors, as long as you're telling the dungeon master you're doing this and you're explaining to them how you're doing it. While I'm walking down the corridor, I'm checking the stone and the bricks, I'm looking for anything that's loose or anything that's a breeze coming through it, things like that. Let your dungeon master know what's doing. Paint them a picture, and they can give you a much better answer as to what happens according to what you're doing. Now, there's a different set of time once you enter combat. Once you enter combat, things are going to change. And it's going to basically go down to each combat round is resolved in 10 seconds. Each round in combat, 10 seconds. During this 10 seconds, a lot of things are happening. You're not just swinging your sword. That's not really the way this works. You're making an attack during that turn, let's say, but you're making multiple attacks. You're feinting, you're probing, you're doing a little slash, a little thrust, and if you end up scoring a hit, then one of those actually hit. That's why it's a 10-second turn. It's not swing. Not quite like that. Now, speaking of combat, when a situation arises where the players are going to be encountering a monster, an enemy, all enemies are called monsters. If you're encountering them, then a few steps are going to happen. First of all, is there a surprise? The dungeon master should be making rolls behind the screen to test out how loud the players are moving and giving the monsters, the encounter, a chance to see if they can hear that. Depending on whether it's through a closed door or down an empty corridor, will make a little bit of a difference in the roll. Now, if one side is surprised, if the monsters are surprised by the players or vice versa, the players are surprised by the monster, they will get a free round of action before the monsters or the players, depending on who surprised who, is able to act. Now, after that surprise round, then initiative is going to be rolled. You do this by rolling the six-sided die. One player on the team and the DM rolling for the monsters are going to roll the six-sided die, and the highest roll is going to get to go first. Now, in a party of adventurers, there are usually two types of players at the table. I'm not talking about personality types. I'm talking about character types. In the basic Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to want a mapper, which is why I brought up the graph paper earlier. One of the players in the group is going to map the dungeon as the DM explains it going along. You are traveling down a corridor going 30 feet west, and it turns north. And you would map it like that. Now, the other player in the group is the caller. In order to save time in arguments and discussion at the table, one of the players is designated the caller. And the caller is the one that makes the decisions for the group, whether they're going to turn down one fork in the road or the other, whether they're going to investigate a door, or what has it. If there's a question about what the group is doing, the DM gets that answer from the caller. The caller is traditionally the one that will roll the six-sided die for initiative. Now, once it is established who won initiative, it breaks down to how the combat happens. First, the archers and ranged attack combatants on either side will get to make their attack roll first. Following that, any magic, any spells that are going to be cast will be cast. And then you get melee combat. You are allowed to move before or after combat, not both. And once that goes through, you start over again with another round of ranged, followed by spells, and then melee combat. Now, it is optional whether you want to roll initiative every single combat round. Most dungeon masters don't, but some enjoy mixing it up. Whichever way you want to do it is still going to be the correct way. Now, when monsters reach a certain point, there's an optional rule called morale. If half their numbers or more have been put down by the players, they get to make a morale roll. The DM is going to roll 2d6 and roll it against the monster's morale roll. The higher the score that they have, the better chance they have to stand their ground, while lower morales are easy to roll higher than. If they lose their morale, they will either surrender or flee, depending on what their possibilities are. Now, spells. I mentioned that for combat. And in this version of Dungeons & Dragons, both clerics and magic users have the ability to cast spells. Clerics, however, will not get that ability until second level. Magic users, and also elves, get the ability to cast spells starting at first level, where they get a chance to pick or roll a six-sided die to randomize which one of these six first level spells that they're going to get. Be careful if you're going to randomize your spell, because in all honesty, a magic user in a dungeon who only knows comprehend language is going to be very limited in helping the party. Each class has its own abilities that it's able to do and equipment that it's able to use. This is all referred back to in the character creation video that we did. Tom Vulo is a chaotic dwarf. Again, link in the description. Now, during the game, the Dungeon Master is going to lead the players through a series of explorations where they're going to be delving into dungeons, mostly, sometimes towns, and if you're incorporating the expert rules, that will get into forest areas. So during the exploration round, experience, known as XP, is earned by the players. And the more experience a particular class has, the closer it is to leveling up in its class. Each class has its own experience points in order to level up. You get this by defeating monsters. You also get this for treasure. 1 gold piece equals 1 experience points. The Dungeon Master will also be rolling for wandering monsters at their discretion. Wandering monsters are usually rolled every 2 rounds, and most adventures, pre-printed adventures, will have wandering monster charts, but if you're designing your own adventure, then please feel free to use level-appropriate monsters for your wandering monster list. Now, light. Inside the dungeon, unless it's otherwise stated, there would be no light sources. Now, some of the classes, such as elves and dwarves, are able to see in the dark through infravision, but this is only being able to see heat outlines and heat differences in the atmosphere and in the environment around them. It's not truly seeing in the dark. So keep track of the light source, and remember that a typical torch is going to illuminate 30 feet in all direction, and that's going to last for 6 turns. Now, lastly, I want to go over some rule concepts that I think you should all know and be aware of while playing the game. First of all, armor class. Armor class is used to designate how hard it is to hit and hurt your character. In this game, the lower the armor class, the better for your character. The lower the armor class of whether it's a character or a monster makes that individual that much harder to hit. Now, not everything is going to come down to armor class. Some things are going to come down to what's called saving throws. There are saving throws to cover categories other than being hit by swords or arrows. These include things like dragon's breath, poison, paralysis, and even imminent death. And these are represented in a point that you are going to have to beat the score of. And if you do, you usually have no effect, or sometimes maybe just half of an effect. Now that brings us to hit points. Hit points is how durable your character is. Things that get past your armor class, things that you don't save against, are going to wear down on your hit points. And when you get down to 0 hit points, unfortunately, your character is expired. Now, how you handle an expired character is up to you and the DM. Usually, in most cases, the rest of the party will strip them of everything they have, but in basic Dungeons & Dragons, it's not uncommon for the Dungeon Master to allow you to bring a new character in who will inherit some stuff. But that's not the rules. That's between you and the Dungeon Master. And also, there's an optional rule called encumbrance. And this is how much you can carry and how much that slows you down. Most Dungeon Masters I've known over the years don't use that rule. From what I've heard, I've even heard Gary Gygax himself didn't use that rule in his gaming. It is an optional rule. Keep that in mind. But with everything I've told you right there, you should have the tools on hand to run and play your first game of basic Dungeons & Dragons. Now remember, this game is highly deadly. Don't let the name basic fool you at all. It may be basic in its rule concepts and mechanics, but it is quite deadly to survive. I would suggest having 3 or 4 characters at a time ready to go. Hopefully, one of your characters will survive a long time, and you'll have a rich history with that character. But just in case, always have some extra characters on hand. What are some of your experiences with basic Dungeons & Dragons? Put it down in the comments and let us know. Me, it is one of my favorite versions of D&D, even after 50 years.